vous avez dit que la police semblait pas nécessairement prendre très au sérieux l'arrivée du convoi, ou en tout cas qu'on ne comprenait peut-être pas l'ampleur de ce qui semblait. Racontez-moi ça.
Je pense que c'était clair qu'on n'aurait pas pu comprendre l'ampleur de ce qu'on a eu. Parce que ce que c'est devenu comparé à ce que c'était, on est très habitué ici à Ottawa d'avoir des manifs et que dans notre tête, c'était une manif normale. Je pense qu'on dit à peu près la même chose, c'était une manif qui s'attendait à être quasi normale, mais qui vraiment est devenue beaucoup plus grande que ça.
Avez-vous l'impression que le chef était un peu dépassé quand vous disiez, il m'a dit au téléphone qu'il avait peur, mon Dieu, c'était un peu incroyable?
J'ai senti que nos leaders étaient un petit peu ébranlés par ce qui se passait. Puis c'était une assez grosse semaine. Je pense qu'il y avait beaucoup de pression. Il y avait des choses qu'on n'a jamais eu la chance d'avoir ici à Ottawa. C'était vraiment du jamais vu. Fait que c'est certain que tout le monde était un peu ébranlé. Et on l'a senti.
Mais vous avez réagi comment lorsque vous avez constaté que même la police, même les autorités semblaient un peu dépassées?
C'est-à-dire que j'ai quand même beaucoup d'expérience en événementiel, puis je connais un peu le terrain. Fait que c'est à ce moment-là que je me suis dit, il doit y avoir de quoi qui est beaucoup plus haut que ce que je comprends qui se passe. C'est le sentiment que j'ai eu qui m'a fait personnellement peur. Maintenant, de là à dire... est-ce que la police est en contrôle? Je pense que oui. Je pense qu'il y avait l'information. C'est moi qui ne l'avais pas. Et c'est moi qui, jusqu'à ce moment-là, n'avais pas constaté que ça pourrait être vraiment plus gros que ce qu'on avait là.
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez qu'on retienne de ce que vous avez vécu, quand je dis vous personnellement, mais vous globalement comme des commerçants?
Mais les commerçants, on s'est fait assommer. C'était à la fin de 2 ans de COVID qui était absolument désastreux. Et juste au moment où on allait réouvrir nos portes, on a eu ce moment-là où est-ce que pendant 3 fins de semaine, même 4 pour certains, on a été complètement fermés. Et ce que j'ai dit là-dedans, c'est très important, c'est que par rapport à COVID, il y avait quand même des options. On pouvait aller, il y avait de la livrette, de la cueillette. De la cueillette qui se faisait au magasin, il y avait des livraisons, mais ici, on ne pouvait vraiment pas rentrer, il n'y avait pas de livraison, il n'y avait pas d'Uber Eats à certains temps. Donc, ça a été vraiment désastreux.
Et sur l'usage des pouvoirs d'urgence, après, à un moment donné, 3 semaines, pensez-vous que c'était la chose à faire de la part du fédéral, de dire là, il faut qu'on se donne les outils pour dégager ça?
C'est pas à moi de décider ça. Je sais qu'il était temps que quelque chose se fasse. C'est ce que je dirais.
Ms. Carrier,
Yes.
one of the testimony that you gave in regards to your conversations that you called with Chief Slowly, there seems to be a lot of parsing of words, but it's something that you remember quite clearly because it worried you.
It worried me because what I realized in that meeting is that this was much greater than what we had previously anticipated, and that our leaders at that point were facing something that had never been faced before. And so it shook me because I have a fairly substantial knowledge of events and the background of events and how these types of things work, and I've been involved in certain situations. And at that moment I realized this is much greater than even my knowledge.
Did you get a sense that things were under control by the police at that moment?
It's difficult to say what control looked like. I mean, it was a challenging time.
Do you think, Mr. McHale, do you think the city was doing all that it could to keep things under control?
I think, again, going back to the fact that this type of event hitting everybody, I don't think anybody could prepare for it. I think everyone went into it thinking it was going to be something, and it turned into something very different, and something that required different resources, different staffings, different equipment, and a different thought process as to how to deal with it.
We heard testimony that you thought there was an email that came out in regards to the fact that many hotel rooms had been booked for 30 days prior to the convoy rolling in. So shouldn't that have been, I guess, pointing to evidence that they were planning to stay for a while?
Again, I can't comment on how intelligence works. I support businesses in the downtown core. We put on events. We try to put on a good time for people to come and visit downtown Ottawa. So I'm not a policing expert, despite the fact that we work with them a lot. So I would say that, no, I can't comment on that. It's just not fair to me to say how.
But from a common sense business perspective, if someone had wanted to book 30 rooms, hotel rooms, blocks of it for 30 days, you would consider that a long-term stay.
I would consider that a long-term stay, but how police and officials would use that information is based on that one email. that's not for me to comment on.
I'm sorry you already spoke to this, but could I just ask about the whole? What are we to understand? You thought was going on in Peter Slowly's mind? Did you think he was scared? Well, I didn't understand that whole section there. Just talk to me. What did you understand he was expressing?
I felt like that week the chief was on the defensive. And I think there was a sense of other things that were happening in the background, but I can't speak to what is in mind.
So when you say...
Comment vous l'interprétez? Vous dites, vous sentez qu'il était...
Mais je pense qu'il y avait beaucoup de pression. Il y avait beaucoup de pression. Il y avait quelque chose d'inaperçu qui n'avait jamais été fait. Il faisait face à quelque chose d'historique, dans le fond, il faut le dire. Donc...
Was he overwhelmed, or...
I can't comment.
You don't know. He didn't say anything to you then?
To me personally, we were in a meeting with a lot of people. He said a lot of things. But that's...
And he said, you recall him saying that he was scared like you.
I recall him feeling empathetic to the tension that we all had about what was happening in our downtown core.
Yeah, but empathetic is one thing. I can say, that's too bad. But I mean, did you? What was his sense of what they were facing?
I think what they were facing was incredibly daunting. That was my feeling.
Dangerous?
And perhaps more daunting than they had faced in the past.
Dangerous? Did you sense they thought it was dangerous?
I will be honest and say at that point I thought there were things that were dangerous in the downtown core that were happening, that were beyond our understanding as BIAs, as businesses, as citizens.
Of course, the central legal question at the center of this inquiry was the government justifying the Emergencies Act, but just as people who were called as witnesses and people who just live and work in downtown Ottawa and the central areas in Ottawa hard hit by the conflict. What are you hoping to see come out of the commission now, potentially in a broader picture?
I don't know if it'll come out of recommendation out of the inquiry, but I certainly would like to see, being that I represent Sparks Street, we're often the middle of the town and the crown. And so one thing that we can certainly hope for is better coordination between the municipality and the federal government and whose jurisdiction is responsible for what. This was an event with a group of people that had grievances with the federal government, and most of their actions happened on municipal property, which kind of left it into a bit of a weird situation. So for me personally and for our organization, what I'd like to see is better coordination of activities and events, both good and bad, when they happen in Ottawa in the future. And so hopefully with the information that's going to come out from communications between various organizations, that we'll see where there were, obviously there were some failings, I would think, but where we can build on that and learn and go forward.
I would like I'm just going to add, I would like the commission to realize the sheer magnitude of what it was. What it looked like on TV as being a 2-block radius in front of Parliament Hill was actually not what was happening. It was a 9-kilometer long protest and occupation of our city that ran from Vanier to Westboro, that had tremendous disruption for our businesses and our citizens.
Je veux juste l'entendre sur les signes précurseurs, vous comme représentant de la communauté d'affaires, n'avez-vous vu des signes que ça pourrait durer longtemps, cette affaire-là?
Ben regarde, si on lisait les médias sociaux, on savait qu'il y avait un train de 70 km ou, farfelu comme ça qui s'en venait dans notre direction. Fait que c'était difficile de croire qu'on pensait qu'il allait juste avoir 2000 camions, là. Fait que pour nous, c'est certain que ça semblait être plus gros, mais bon, on fait confiance à nos leaders et on fait ce qu'on a à faire.
Il y avait des chambres d'hôtel aussi. Là.
Il y avait des chambres d'hôtel qui étaient bookées aussi, ce que j'ai su par après, là, mais c'est certain que il y a peut-être raison de croire.
Ms. Carrier, so you're a hockey mom. You did some reconnaissance work at the Coventry camp.
Oh God, this is embarrassing.
Your reaction?
My son's gonna hate me.
What was your reaction when you saw what was going on?
Look, I think just like everybody else, there was some really great families and people that had strong opinions that wanted to voice them, and good people. There was also nefarious things and things that normally wouldn't be allowed to happen here in the city of Ottawa. You can't transfer fuel from your truck to a jerry can. You can't carry that jerry can down the street. You can't make a fire. You can't just put up a food truck or a food service of some sort and have it done. So there's a lot of things that we are watching and witnessing that we normally, as citizens, as business people, can't do in the city of Ottawa without a permit. And all of those things were being done willy-nilly for weeks on end.
Were you aware that there were hundreds of police officers staying at the adjoining Marriott to that lot, and this was happening?
I don't want to. No, I was not aware of that. Ben, c'est-à-dire que la question, c'était est-ce qu'il y avait raison de croire que ça allait peut-être plus gros? Puis je pense que n'importe qui lisait les médias sociaux et qui savait qu'il y avait un train de 70 km qui s'en venait dans notre direction avait raison de croire que ça pourrait être pas mal plus que 30 camions, mais c'est certain que c'était quand même fluide. Tu sais, c'était une parade qui grossissait puis qui rapetissait à mesure que ça approchait vers Ottawa. Fait que, tu sais, de dire qu'on pouvait prédire tout, je pense que ça leur été impossible, mais c'est certain qu'il y avait, d'après nous, des indices que ça allait être pas mal plus gros que ce qu'on s'attendait. Ben, c'est-à-dire la question, c'était, d'habitude, quand on fait des événements comme ça, on laisse pas rentrer les camions, on ferme les rues. Pourquoi on peut pas fermer les rues? Puis on a eu plusieurs différentes réponses, mais que c'était juste pas la posture qu'elle allait être prise, là. Sorry, you're not. I'm just trying. The question was about whether or not, when we asked for candidate posturing, what were the answer that we were given? Sorry, I just need.
I can't really recall that. What I would say is that our thinking was that this is.
Like, why couldn't they candidate?
Yeah, so the best answer I'd have is that as I recall it, we were told it's a freedom of movement, freedom of access, and freedom of speech things. Which, again, being on Sparks Street for almost a decade now, I've seen or witnessed thousands of activations on Parliament Hill. I mean, you could put 15,000 people on that hill, and you wouldn't even have a clue if you're a block away. The difference was we had 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people and 1,000 vehicles that made this stretch into a 9-kilometer, 10-kilometer space, blocking roads and access to business and terrorizing residents with first horns and then just the revving of engines and silly little mischievous type stuff, which having just lived through it for 3.5 weeks or so is just incredible. I mean, I got to go home to Canada every night. I'd come in every day and to be there for my businesses if they needed it. But the residents down here had to live it 24/7. And I have a couple shop owner who lives in the area, and she said it was horrible. And it was just, I couldn't imagine. I had a respite from it, and it was. We could talk about decibels and things like that and the occasional air horn, but if you ever just sit there listening and feeling the rumble of a dozen diesel engines, it's a different feeling. It can roll through your body in a way that's unsettling. And to, again, for our area to be subjected to that, was awful, quite honestly. And anyone could imagine just living beside a truck stop. That would give you a small taste of what that was.
C'était assez clair pour vous qu'ils n'allaient pas bloquer les camions.
Non, c'était clair. C'était clair. On avait demandé, puis on dit non. Puis il faut le mettre dans le contexte aussi qu'une manif avec 3000 personnes, c'est pas une immense manif à Ottawa, là. Donc, tu sais, encore une fois, bien qu'il y avait des communications qui disaient, bon, il va y avoir X manifestants, puis on s'attend peut-être que ça va développer à mesure que la fin de semaine se passe. C'est certain que pour nous, 3000 personnes, c'était pas alarmant. So I'll say it in English because I think it's important. When we were told about the protest initially, they were talking about 3,000 people. 3,000 people is not a gigantic protest here in Ottawa. It is a very small protest. It's not something I think that you would even bat much of an right. And so 3,000 people did not seem at first like something that was worrisome. I mean, I think the thing that made it worrisome was the number of vehicles. That's what made it challenging. That's what we were hearing.
Did you consider Coventry Road a threat, and did you feel that police were adequately dealing with that?
I don't think Coventry Road was a threat in the beginning, but I think that it very quickly became a base camp. I think it was feeding the downtown core, and I think that there were things that were very dangerous there, like transferring of fuels and things that would go against normal rules here in the city of Ottawa that could put the residents and the businesses at risk. And I think that at times it was feeling nefarious, and other times it felt like a family gathering, depending on the day, depending on the time. So that I was there, that I experienced.
Did police devote enough resources?
Was this the first Sunday like you spoke about very time?
I think the second weekend is when for me, the second weekend was really feeling like, okay, they're here to stay, and it's it felt different. there was more settled in. You know, the small cars had, in Coventry specifically, the sort of family cars that were there had given way to, you know, major trucks, big infrastructure, tents, and, you know, the types of things you would see in a base camp that's supporting an operation or a big festival for several weeks.
I'd say on Sparks Street, you felt it by Sunday morning. It was different.
Really?
Saturday evening, because that's where the heart of it was.
That's
so
right.
I would say that's where, again, having worked in the Corps for 20 years, you have energy for this, and you have a feeling for it, and that you knew it was just a little different by Saturday night. And that's kind of, I think that kind of reflects what Nathalie was. It was for a lot of people that came in for a weekend and they left, and then a different kind of element was here for the remainder of them.